Page 30, blocked chord study and broken chord study. At the top of the page they're introducing a thing called a C chord. Well, let's take it one step at a time. I sort of explained this in a previous video, but now we'll go into it a little deeper. There's many things about music and music notation people do not agree on, and they never have. For hundreds of years they've never agreed. One of those things is, what is the definition of a chord? They don't agree. Depends on which reference book you're looking up or which dictionary you're using. I've seen both definitions. Some people say 2 or more notes is a chord. Other people say, no, it's got to be 3 or more notes as a chord. I've always used, and I still do, if it's 2 or more notes, it's a chord. Any more than 1 note is automatically a chord to me. So I call them chords. If you disagree with that, good. More power to you, but in these videos, I'm calling them chords. You'll have to grit your teeth or whatever. So at the beginning, they show them in the warm-ups. You're starting out with just 2 notes, the C and the G, and then they add the E, because the C and G are tied. You don't play them again. Then they add the E. So you get a 3-note chord. We call that a triad. Tri means 3. I don't know what ad is, but triad is a 3-note chord. And if the bottom note is a C, it is a C chord. One more thing to that. In order to use the bottom note to identify the chord, the notes have to be every other note. If I had like here, where there's 2 notes in between, it's no longer a C chord. That does not identify it. I have to use these notes and rearrange it until I get it into where they're just a note apart. Then I can use the bottom note to identify the chord. A C chord, wherever. Doesn't matter where it's at, it's a C chord. More to it, but let's just stick with that right now. That's good enough to get us going. Then we have what's known as a block chord. The block chord study, that is where you're playing all of the notes in the chord at the same time. They're blocked. And the technique for that is I put my hand in the position I need for the notes involved. In this case, it starts out in the left hand. This is the block chord study line. In the left hand you have a C, an E, and a G in 1, 3, 5. These are the note fingers involved, so I'm going to put my hand there with these fingers down, and the other 2 fingers are up slightly because I don't want to play those notes. I'm going to lower the whole hand down. I'm not using the fingers to try and push them down. I'm lowering the hand. The hard part, and I still struggle with this, is getting all the notes down at exactly the same time. I don't feel too bad about struggling with it because I've heard recordings of professionals playing. They don't get the notes down at the same time all the time. So you have to work on the technique for that. Any chord can work this way. Same thing in the right hand. Look at the second measure. You have the C and the E and the G, the chord. You put your hand in that position, you lower the hand. Try and get them down. Takes practice, but that's what it is. Then in the broken chord study down at the bottom, that is simply where you play the notes anything other than blocked. There's all kinds of patterns for broken chords, all kinds, and you can have sometimes multiple notes at the same time where others are not, still a broken chord. So here the pattern we're using is just bottom, middle, top. The beginning there, it's bottom, middle, top. It's still a chord. You're just playing it 1 note at a time. See, the idea is the brain, the way it works, it will remember the notes previously played for a little bit of time. So even though you're playing these 1 at a time, you can still hear the harmony. And that's a broken chord. There's nothing real tricky about these. I want to go through them because we need the practice of playing things. So I'll go through them both. I'll count us in for each one. There's a repeat sign on the block chord. We're going to play it twice because we want to play it the way it's written. On the broken chord study, it's in 3/4 time, so you only get 3 counts to come in. And the last measure, look at that. The left hand has to go over, and it's saying use second finger. I don't care which finger, you can use third finger if you want. But the right hand in the measure before it is here. And then you reach over the second finger and play that high C. Leave both hands right there until the counting is done, and then you can lift both hands at the same time. Good technique. I'll give us 4 counts for the block chord study, and we'll play it. Then I'll count us in again. I'll give us 3 counts for the broken chord study, and we'll play that. Now, dynamics on the broken chord study, take a look. They're starting out loud, and the first 2 measures are loud, and there's really no melody here, so it's all the same. But then in the third measure, now it's soft. And this is good practice, because you need to be able to control how loud you play pieces, so it's good practice to practice playing them loud and soft. They should be doing it in both hands, because the right hand, well, the second measure when the right hand plays, you're playing loud. And then the last measure when the right hand plays, you're playing soft. So I guess the right hand gets to practice a little. The thing the right hand doesn't get to practice here is the staccato. If you look at the first and third measure of the block chord study, the quarter notes are staccato here. Couple of staccato. Let's just use the wrist here. Just bounce off the keys. You're on it and you go boom. You just go down. Don't start up here and go down here. Don't hit them. Start on them and just bounce off. And then 2 measures later you get the same thing, only soft. Can you do it soft? With the broken chord study, it's all legato. Just connect it all. I'll just brief you a little bit about technique. I'll talk more about this later, but on broken chords like this, I'm rolling the weight, transferring weight from finger to finger. It's like the spokes on a wheel, sort of. I'm just transferring the weight. The wrist might move a little bit. I'll let the wrist do whatever it wants. I'm not controlling that. I'm just transferring the weight. Don't hold the hand still and try and do it with the fingers. Let the weight, transfer the weight from finger to finger. You see, it's a little misleading. You say, okay, what are these phrases? Well, they're not phrases, they're slurs. Because the whole thing is one big long phrase. So just a little bit of silence between the second and third measure and the fourth and fifth measure. Just lift up a little early so that you get some silence before you go on. So let's try these together. I'll give us 4 counts on broken chord study. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Repeat. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Broken chord steady. 1, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, off.